Is your field infected? That's the question we're asking here today, and we're going to get it answered. The point is there's a lot of stuff out there that tries to get between you and your crops being very successful. Do you have the right tools to detect such problems? Hey, Damian Mason here with a question before we hop into this episode of the Business of Agriculture. If you farm for a living, you employ a lot of amazing technology, from your inputs that you put into the soil to the tractor that you sit in, your combine, and the amazing data that it harvests. But has your soil analytics kept up technologically with everything else in your farming operation? I would venture to say that no, it is not. Sure, you check for your nitrogen, your phosphorus, your potassium, your micronutrients as well. But what about disease pressure? Do you know what diseases and what pests you're going to face next year? No, you don't. But you can now figure that out with PatternAg's predictive analytics. Think about it. They can tell you now with testing what the likelihood of facing nasty diseases, things like cyst nematode or sudden death syndrome, what the likelihood of you having this in your field. Then you know how to prepare, how to treat, and where to invest your money. It's using technology to make you bigger yields and therefore make you bigger money. Go to www.pattern.ag to learn more. They are pioneering the way in predictive agronomy. Hey there, thanks for joining us for another fantastic episode of the Business of Agriculture. It's me, Damian Mason. You knew that, said so in the introduction. I've got Mike Tweedy here, and we're talking about your field and whether it's infected. Okay, maybe you're not actually in production agriculture, but if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you're actively involved in some stream, some part of the business of agriculture. Let's face it, we have probably overused insecticide, herbicide, fungicide through the years. I liken it to what we did in livestock. We used to put tetracycline in all the poultry drips in all of the United States of America. And what we ended up doing, well, yeah, we got a little bit more big birds and we put on gain a little bit more efficiently, but we also built up antibiotic resistance and we created bacteria that are really, really nasty. What if we're doing that in our fields? That might be a problem. And also, what if there are issues out there in your residue? You've got something going on in your field and you have no idea, but now there's a technology that can help you find it 6 months in advance. We're talking about that technology with Mike Tweedy. He's the head of sales for PatternAg. You're kind of excited because this new technology you have detects stuff that's almost been undetectable until it was already a problem. Am I right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's an expansion of the number of pathogens that we already have in our product right now, and these are really significant ones in corn. So we will be turning on in mid-August in our reports detection of northern corn leaf blight, gray leaf spot, and Goss's wilt, and combined those cause about $1.5 billion in economic losses for growers every single year. So this is this is a nice way for growers to be able to see if their fields are infected or not well in advance before they choose their hybrid and before they and to put it together a scouting plan.
So we had you on before and we talked about the big thing with your technology is that the likelihood, the predictability of there being something like, sudden death syndrome in my soybean field. And if it's like a 4% chance that it's going to happen, why the hell would I be worried about it? Or there's some other stuff, cyst nematode. So this new stuff, there's new technology now, you're predicting whether or not I'm going to have northern corn leaf blight. And you can tell me that because of the residue samples. Are you the only company that can do that?
Right now, to my knowledge, nobody else is offering these three pathogens in a predictive way. And so what we're looking for is the inoculum that exists in those fields. And then we tell you, yes, that inoculum exists. And yes, you need to take action to protect your corn crop for the next year.
90 million acres roughly every year of corn in the United States of America. And you just said a big number, but on a percentage of those acres, if there's 90 million corn acres in the United States, one of those three pathogens is found on how many of them on average? Half? Quarter?
Yeah, northern corn leaf blight. Okay, so this is our entire database across the Midwest of fields that we have tested. About 50% contain northern corn leaf blight or are fields that are infected. 28% have gray leaf spot. and 63% of those fields have Goss's wilt. So they're not on every acre. And the important thing to note here is, if you know that in advance, then you can, one, choose your hybrid that's going to protect against those pathogens. Two, know exactly which fields that you want or that you're going to need to scout. Yeah. And three, precision in fungicide applications should expression occur in those fields. And so what we want to protect against is, one, making sure that the growers put in the dollar in the right place. And two, we want to reduce the mitigate for resistance that can build up. So putting the fungicides where we need them and not putting them where we don't.
So that's obviously the pitch here, is that it's a cost saver. Gray leaf spot, I just wrote down those numbers. You said 28% of the acres in your database, which is significant, right? I mean, you're not talking about you did 2 fields. You've got a significant database. So, 1 million acres or something.
Yeah, in excess of 1 million acres is what we've tested, and that's what we have found both. And we've, the great thing about what we're doing, Damian, is that when we turn this pathogen on, because we turn biology into gigabytes of data, we can also look at what was the pressure last year across the Midwest, and we look at it by subclimate. And what I can tell you is there's roughly a 10% difference between the pressure levels between last year and this year. And so we can look at it year over year. And that's one of the questions that we often get is like, how often should I be testing? Well, these pathogen levels change every single year and in every single field. So every field is not the same every year.
So let's use the lowest one, gray leaf spot. You said 28% of the corn acres have that. The benefit, I think that's kind of cool. In the old days, you wouldn't know you had it until you went out and scouted the field and said, oh, crap, this is in my field. And then you might be behind the 8 ball, which is why most farmers, if they're proactive, do a fungicide treatment before they ever see it. Because like my XtremeAg guys tell me, once you see it, you've already got yield drag. So yep. The answer is prevention and preemptive treating. But you brought up the idea that might not be good, because if you're going out and unnecessarily treating for something, maybe you just ended up making the problem worse 5 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, resistance is not new within our industry. We see it with insecticides, fungicides, herbicides. And the way that you get resistance the fastest is over application of a certain product, especially in something that populates very rapidly. And so what we can inform is, one, which fields do you need to do that preventive application? Which fields do I need to scout? I put myself in the shoes of an agronomist or someone who does a lot of crop scouting. If you knew which fields you needed to go to, that would be a hell of a lot easier than going and trying to scout every single field for the expression.
So here's the thing. So you've got the best answer here is, don't treat just preemptively, not knowing whether you need it, but you don't have to, because what I'm hearing is, I'm going to know if I've got it. I guess I might still get it if I don't have it in a fall, but if I have it in a fall, I certainly have to treat it, right? So your idea is, I go out and I gather residue. Am I gathering corn stalks from 2 years ago, or am I gathering the soybean stubble? Because if I have a corn and soybean rotation, I'm going to corn next spring. Am I gathering up any fodder in that field to check, or is it in the soil? Where am I getting my sample?
We're getting it from both. So if you've got heavy residue, then we're going to pick up some of the residue, but we're also going to pick it up in the soil. We get heavy signal actually in the soil. Okay. And so whatever crop is coming off of that field, we're going to test that. We're going to test, and then we're going to provide not just these 3 results, but all the other soybean pathogens and corn pathogens like corn rootworm. So they're going to get all of that back in one test. But we do that right after harvest, and then turn those results back around. Now, you mentioned we're talking about in-season applications, but that's not applicable to Goss's wilt. One of the things that is so destructive about Goss's wilt, because it's on 63% of the fields that we have tested, yep, is you have to choose the right hybrid. That is a bacteria. That is not a fungus. So there is no post-application that you can do.
So there's nothing I can do once if I have Goss's wilt in my corn, and I don't know when it attacks, but presumably, somewhere during the season that's detrimental to yield. Once I see I got it, first off, do people even test for Goss's wilt?
Yeah, you can test for Goss's wilt. You can, and you can see a visual diagnosis of what it looks like in the field as well. But once you have it, it's too late. It's going to do whatever damage it's going to do. So you really want to make sure that you choose that right hybrid in the winter and you put it in the ground for maximum protection against it.
Is it a triple? We talk about the triple stack and the quad stack. Is that where you get it from? In other words, to get protection from the hybrid, from the seed, do I need like a quad stack, or is it something beyond that?
No, it's something that's bred into the hybrid.
Okay.
So this is something that's inserted.
Not a trait.
It's not a trait.
Not a trait that we didn't genetically engineer it in. So why wouldn't all the hybrids have Goss's wilt resistance bred into them?
Well, you're going to have trade-offs, right? Because not every single hybrid is going to work on every single field. And so really what you want to understand is you want to take a holistic look of what are the threats in my field and what is the soil like in my field. And then you're going to make decisions on that. If you've got corn rootworm, for example, then you're going to want something that's got a stacked trait in it. If you've got anthracnose, then you're going to want a hybrid that has resistance to that. If you have Goss's wilt, then you're going to want to pick a hybrid. So there's a number of different ones out there that have different ratings. And that's really why this is an important piece of intelligence for the trusted advisor, which is the seed dealer and the agronomist, to sit down and make those trade-off selections so that they can get the highest yield possible.
So if I have my local consultant agronomist or my seed dealer that I deal with comes out in October, November and says, hey, I get up samples. You've got these 3 fields have this Goss's wilt. It's already there. You should buy this. These other fields, you're fine. Should I worry that somehow it hops the road and goes to those other fields? Or is it pretty much, if I'm good in October, is it pretty much certain that I'm going to be good come April?
Yeah, so part of our validation process is we look at these fields both in the fall before we ever turn a product on. It's a really extensive validation process that takes about a year. One of the things that we do is we look at the field in the fall and we look at it in the spring. But there's a lot of things that we already know about these pathogens, their behaviors, that are already published. So once you have it in that field, then it's not going to move out of that field unless you move that trash out of that field. If you move that trash out of that field, then you can infect another one.
Well, I mean, obviously the wind blows. I mean, is that, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how catchy this is. I mean, hell, you and I are sitting in a country right now that told us that paper masks are going to prevent us from a virus. So I don't know, man. I'm all off sorts here about how transmissible stuff is.
Yeah. No, I mean, it tends not to move from field to field, except you can move it through cultivation and getting trash that goes from one field to another. Obviously, at harvest, you can do that. If you've got infected material and the combine's not cleaned out, you can actually move it from one field to another.
So answer me this. You guys pioneered this whole thing, and I know that I read it in my intro that I do for your company. Cyst nematode, sudden death syndrome, and there's one other big one. I can't remember which one. Corn rootworm, maybe?
Corn rootworm is definitely, so in terms of what our customers really look at, they find value in all of them, but all your seedling diseases and root rots like Fusarium, Rhizoctonia, Pythium, those are some of the big ones. You've got corn rootworm, in which we can not only tell you if you've got corn rootworm, but we can tell you if it's northern or western, which is important from a rotational standpoint. And then in soybeans, it's soybean cyst nematode, sudden death syndrome, and several others that are in that line of products as well. And when you order Complete 360, we call it Complete Bio. Complete Bio gives you everything for your corn and your soybeans, and it's super simple to look at the results. And for example, on northern corn leaf blight, we're just going to tell you it's red or it's green. Your field is infected or it is not infected. And then they can make a decision on hybrid selection at that point.
I think the big thing there is that you're armed with more information from a managerial standpoint versus being reactive. I want to talk to you about information. I want to talk to you more importantly about what you think is going to happen with this in terms of being able to reduce your inputs, because I think the environmental angle is one that you should play up as a company. Before I do that, I want to remind you, if you're listening to this, you are in the business of agriculture. My buddy Rob Sykes says that 19% of a farmer's time is spent seeking answers and solutions to problems that they have. Why don't you quicken your allocation of the information you require through Agvisor Pro? Agvisor Pro is an app you put on your phone. It's all you got to do is just put this app on your phone, Agvisor Pro. It's free. Put it on there. And then there are basically a whole bunch of experts. So instead of going on Twitter and typing in, hey, I got this problem, and then you get all the lunatic fringe and all these people that, badmouth you, go on this site and you say, I need to find someone that is an expert in this area to help me figure this out. That's what you can do. Don't take my word for it. You can take the word from the gentleman's name is Mackenzie Fingerhut. It's not even a made up name. He's a farmer from Alberta, Canada. And here's what he has to say.
We were sitting on the fence about booking the rest of our fertilizer, but after one quick session with Mo Augustino, that really just kind of gave us the kick that we needed and to finalize the rest of our booking. In a week or so, the price rallied $100, $200 a ton and subsequently saved us over $70,000.
All right. Thank you, Agvisor Pro. All right. So we're talking about where I think this whole thing goes. If your field is infected, do you know it? Our diagnostics have gotten, 10 times better than they were a decade or two ago. This seems like it's where it's going because it allows us to use less stuff or use better prescription stuff. Mike, are we going to get to where we look back and say, good God, 10 years ago, we just went out there and flinged this stuff out there willy-nilly. Is it going to be regulated? Is it going to be like to where like we can't do that? Is it going to be the point where you have to make the case for using a product? I wonder if that's where we're going.
I don't know if I can get into my crystal ball and talk, accurately about regulation. Who knows where that goes? What I can say is if you look back even 10, 15 years ago, the way that we farmed then versus now, it's markedly different. But we still didn't understand what was happening in the biology of our soil. And so with the reduction of cost and being able to DNA sequence and us being able to map the soil microbiome, it unlocks all of those things, which is going to lead to the next revolution in ag. I mean, we have corn hybrids and soybean varieties that can yield far beyond what they are today, but we don't understand the medium in which we plant that seed. At a fundamental level, what we know is about a foot of a mile deep iceberg. That's how much we understand.
I've always said, I think the soil biology is kind of the next great frontier. We might arguably know more about what's going on the surface of Mars than we know what's actually happening in this field behind my house from a biological level. And so that brings up the question, there's been this proliferation of biological products that have come out, and you and I talked about before we hit record, the raft barges full of money that came into that space. And you almost wonder like, okay, that's cool. Biologicals are the future, but do you even know what the hell you're starting with? And I think that's what you're talking about. I get excited about your stuff because it's diagnostics of knowing what you're starting with from a pathogen level.
Yep. And so what excites me about what we're doing is, look, biologicals are here to stay, and they're growing at a very rapid, those products are growing at a very rapid pace. But they have a direct interaction with what is happening in the soil. So you're taking a live biological material and you're putting it in a highly complex biological environment. Well, there's going to be fields where it's going to express and it's going to work really great and you're going to see great results. And then you're going to put it in other fields where you're not going to see any results at all. And I can use one specific category as an example of that, and that's P solubilization, phosphorus. Rock phosphorus we're going to run out of rock phosphorus to mine in 60 years.
So Hey, wait. They also told me when I was a little boy playing with my Matchbox cars, we were going to run out of fossil fuels in 40 years. And that was 50 years ago. And we still have more fossil fuels. We're now inventing reasons to not use this stuff. So are you sure about this 60 years of phosphorus?
Yeah, the folks that are mining the phosphorus today are telling us that we've got about 60 years left to mine. But there is so much rock phosphorus that is in those fields today that we can mine that aren't available. And that's
the point is we don't need to mine anymore out of the mines. We've got a whole bunch of phosphorus that's hanging around our soils that's not getting tapped.
Yeah, we're not unlocking the full potential of what already exists in our fields today, and the work that we're doing is providing those insights to say, yes, here's this biological product. Here's the field that you need to place it on for it to work and unlock the phosphorus, or use a nitrogen stabilizer, or use a soybean inoculant. We can tell those things today, and those are super important decisions because those are high input cost products. And if you're putting phosphorus on a field that you don't have phosphorus solubilization occurring today, you're just adding more rock phosphorus that's not going to get utilized.
Did you like my comparison there with the matchboxes and the oil? I don't know. Anyway.
Oh yeah. Hey, I like anything a little off the shelf.
My wife tells me that she says I'm on the spectrum and I'm commonly off the shelf. Answer me this then. On the diagnostic standpoint, where's the next thing? All right, you pioneered the whole thing about those big ones that we talked about, cyst nematode, for instance, whatever. Now it's these three in corn. For God's sakes, you've got a lot of the nasty boys from corn and soy covered. Is there something else? Where's your next predictive analytics technology going to take us?
Well, I'm not going to release what's coming, but I will tell you there's some very, very big pathogens that are of high importance and on a lot of people's mind, particularly in corn, that will be and soybeans that will be coming in the not too distant future. We take real care before we turn a pathogen on to know with precision that it's there, that we're measuring it, and that we can turn that result around with certainty to the grower so that they can make a decision on it. What we do is not trivial. It's a very, very complex process of data analytics, machine learning, and DNA sequencing. But we turn all that complex stuff around, we test it, we validate it, and we make sure that it's completely accurate before we turn it on. And we have a whole list of pathogens and beneficials, by the way, that are coming in the not too distant future. And so what I want to tell kind of reiterate to the audience is when you sign up with us and you get these results, when we turn something new on, you're going to get it for all past reports too. So you'll be able to see what was happening in your field last year because we turn biology into gigabytes of data.
So, obviously the stuff's working and that's why you're growing at leaps and bounds. But here's the next question. When we look at this thing, your data is found, and then you said it's found in the fodder. So again, the benefit there is I can start predicting. I already know if I have it or don't have it in October, November for next spring. I can make a bunch of decisions. I think it's important. It's found in the debris. It's not caused by the debris. I mean, you don't want somebody to start saying, "Oh, now we got to burn our fields. So there's no fodder out there." That's not the case, right?
No, that's not the case. And it's not just in the residue, it's in the soil because we're picking it up in high signal on both of them. So you can burn your field, but it's not going to do any good because it's still there. And so what the key point is, we want to follow the combine out of the field, because once that combine has gone through there, then we can then test what pathogens are there for the next season, and then they can make those decisions with their seed advisor.
One of the things we talked about biology, and a buddy of mine, non-ag guy that actually listens to this podcast, talked to me about the biologicals and then comparing it to the microbiome within our bodies. And it leads into this next thing of, we know we're very efficient. We make good stuff, but we also have killed a lot of beneficial stuff. And I think we're going to look back at some of our sins of how we in Gabe Brown's book, Dirt to Soil, all about regenerative stuff, we've for a century looked at kill versus nurture and nurture. And that's kind of where I think some of this technology of yours goes. We are using stuff. If there's only 28% of the acres that have gray leaf spot, we're probably overusing products, and we're probably killing some stuff. We're probably killing some stuff that's not harmful.
Potentially. I mean, you have to weigh out, and what I like about our reports is we not only look at the benefit or the pathogens and decisions to make there, but we also look at the beneficials, the trichoderma species, the mycorrhizal fungi. These are things that determine the health of the plant and the soil. And so we're going to provide enough information where they can make a holistic decision on, hey, do I need to add some trichoderma species? Do I need to does this field need to go into a cover crop or not? And so it provides the intelligence of what you have, what's in the bank and what's not in the bank, and then gives that trusted advisor an opportunity to make decisions on, like Gabe said, making that soil healthier or adding products to it.
Yeah. So, in the future, I think we use less products. I don't see any way around it. I think in the future we use less inputs because we realize that the cheap solution was to throw more inputs at it. But like you said about phosphorus, throwing out more phosphorus doesn't help you unlock it or get your uptake into the plant. I think this is the kind of technology that allows us to use less stuff. And I think that's probably where we're going to be maybe legislated where we have to go, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, who knows what legislatures are going to do, but what I can say is that whether it's more or less products, there'll be a transition of products from, some reduction in synthetic chemistry to more adoption of biological products, which is, not necessarily, it's not a bad thing. But what we want to do is make sure that they're placing those products where they're going to work and where the grower is going to get the most bang for their buck when they write the check for whatever they're going to be using on their fields.
Your pitch on this kind of stuff is that we allow you to have better results. I mean, that's the pitch of what you're doing here. We're giving you predictive analytics. You have this problem, you don't have this problem. You can either use less products or use the right product. What's our limitation? My buddy at XtremeAg say it's not the seed. These seed companies tout, but he's like, the seed's not the problem. It's always some other limiting factor. Is it disease? Is it pathogen? Is it infected fields? Is that our limiting factor? Or is it not applying the right stuff?
It's multiple things. So definitely it's pathogens. If you're not protecting for the pathogens that exist in your field in the right way, or if you're not choosing the right hybrid or trait, then that's definitely a limiting factor. But it's also the good stuff. Do you have a full bank account of trichoderma species or mycorrhizal fungi in your fields that is going to, even put more fuel in the tank for that corn or that soybean plant out there? So it's not just the pathogens, it's the good stuff that we need to look at too, and making sure that we have a healthy soil. And soil health is defined in many different ways, but we look at it scientifically from the trichodermas and the mycorrhizal fungi. So we're looking at it from that standpoint. But also soil health is, how many diseases are out there? How many pathogens are out there? And let's protect against those things so that the grower can get the highest yield that they possibly can out of there.
Yeah. So, and you're right. There's a bunch of limiting factors. And then the thing is, they might all add up to be, here's a 3% drag, here's a 3% drag. This seems to me, we're still farming acres that maybe shouldn't be farmed. And a lot of people read the New York Times about, farmland's being paved over. Well, maybe, and I'm not a big fan of the solar, but overtaking farm fields. But the reality is, it seems like stuff like this gets us maximum output of the good acres so that the lesser acres can go back to trees. And I really think that's where we're going. Does that seem like where we're going from your perspective? Yeah,
I mean, you look, your crop productivity in Western Kansas is going to be different than it is in Eastern Kansas. Same thing in Nebraska. Same thing in Colorado. It's going to be much different than Iowa, just because of your climate, right? And so you're going to get so much out of there. What we can inform, though, by looking at the soil biology is getting the maximum amount of productivity out of that soil, no matter which one that they're farming.
Yeah. All right. What did we not cover? We asked the question, is your field infected and how would you know? And that's really what we're talking about here, is increasing the amount of knowledge through, predictive analytics is one of the terms we use when we talk about your company. And there's other sources. There's other things that are doing not the same thing as you, but informing us where we used to tread blindly. That's what's it's not just you, it's kind of the whole evolution and revolution that's going on in agriculture is where we're getting better about not shooting from the hip. I really think is what we're kind of talking about.
Yeah. I mean, the way that I think about it is we are a key missing piece of data that can inform where this new technology can be used, right? I mean, you got drones everywhere, right?
Right.
But what good is a drone if you don't know where to put it? You know, if I want to go scout, if I've got a drone and I want to go scout for, disease in corn, wouldn't it be nice if I knew which field was infected before I went and threw that up in the air?
By the way, it's funny you should bring up drones, Mike. I did an episode about drones. I think it's great technology. And I pondered this when I was sitting in some ag meetings in February. And when we talk about where the investment in ag technology is going, it must be a few big venture capital monies must have come into drones, because about 3 times a week we get pitched on bringing drone companies onto the business of agriculture. I'm like, we just did one. I think we've covered that subject, though. There's probably more money being tossed at drones than money being spent on drones could. I don't know. I mean, what's your perspective, by the way, on the drone usage? It's coming, and it's right now. It's more of a surveillance or a spot and spray thing, but does it ever do the next thing? Are we going to be planting fields with the damn things?
Well, I mean, it's not like the military. I mean, you take drones in the military, they can maximize their use because they have the intelligence to know where to use them and how to use them. Okay. In corn and soybean production, we don't right now. I mean, we're trying to guess right when we throw a drone up in a field. Yeah. If you think about that scout that works for the retail co-op, he's just driving around from field to field to field. Yeah. And maybe he's going to throw a drone up and then makes him look really smart. But if he had a list of fields that he needed to go see that says, okay, this field's got northern corn leaf blight. The conditions are getting right. We're getting up to 90+% humidity. I need to go throw a drone up, or I just need to spray this one little, 80-acre field with a drone. I don't need to call in an airplane for it or something. So it's just the limiting factor is intelligence.
So speaking of intelligence, the person who's listening to this is kind of skeptical, says, well, if gray leaf spot, if northern corn blight has a 53 or 60% chance of it being out there, I'm still going to just treat, rather than paying for your technology to tell me if it's in the field or not, for what's a fungicide treatment? $17 an acre, something like this, $15 an acre?
Right, probably closer to 20.
Okay, call it $20. Why not just go ahead and run the $20? That's the skeptic's answer is, I can spray it for $20 and I know it's handled, because you're going to cost me, how much am I going to pay for your service?
So our test costs about a bushel of soybeans. And for a bushel of soybeans, for that full test, we can save you at least $10 on that fungicide application if you didn't need it. Okay. Potentially a lot more if you didn't spray that field. Now, I said that 53% of the fields were infected, but what we look at is, where is the infection rates high? Because they're very low in places like Minnesota, North Dakota for northern corn leaf blight, but they're very high in Iowa, parts of basically northern Illinois, I-70 and above, Nebraska. Those are the places where they are. So the variability of where the pressure is hugely different from state to state, right, and even in subclimate.
Got it. All right, get me out of here. What also I need to know on the way out the door, if I want to learn more about this, obviously we work with PatternAg. Go to patternag.com. No, pattern.ag.
Yep, pattern.ag. And then we can put, if they want to become a seed dealer, or if they want to become a pattern dealer, they can contact us there on that website. Or if they want to learn more, they can reach out to us there as well.
Pattern.ag. Anyway, they're a company I work with. I'm still marveling at their technology. I think this is where the future goes. His name is Mike Tweedy. If you have questions, he's going to have plenty of time to respond while he's laid up. He's getting his back worked on this Thursday. He's actually smiling through massive amounts of lower back pain right now. So by the time you actually are listening to this, he'll be in recovery mode, and he'll be ready to get out there and be running with the bulls here in another little bit. Till next time, thanks for being here. My name is Damian Mason, and this is the Business of Agriculture. Hey, thanks for being here. This episode of the Business of Agriculture was brought to you by PatternAg. You've heard me talk about PatternAg because I think it's a pretty cool concept. New technology that allows you to predict the problems you're going to have and therefore treat them before those problems cost you money. What kind of problems am I talking about? Pests and disease. Things like cordon rootworm, sudden death syndrome, cyst nematode, and a whole bunch of other bad things that happen out there in the field that can cost you money. Guess what? PatternAg will let you find out ahead of time if the disease or the pest pressure is there, and therefore you're treating it before it costs you any money. What a great concept. Go to pattern.ag, that's www.pattern.ag, to learn more about their product, their technology, how it can make you money, save you yield, and also where you can find a rep that can come out there and do the work for you. Pattern.ag.